Welcome to Whachacha's Tabletop World, a channel devoted to the love of board gaming. My name is Sweetness Whachacha, and today these are my thoughts on Fate. If you want to see my overview on the game, click on the link below. Okay, so firstly I'd like to start always with the art and the theme and the components. The artwork is very cartoony. I don't usually prefer that style in a game of this nature. So the art is good, but it's not kind of like, it's got a very lightheartedness, cartoonish style to it. And there's a lot of jokes and things that kind of support that art throughout the rule book and stuff like that. The components themselves, a few things. They're very good. Like, I think these, it's got the miniatures for the town here, which is cool. It's, I like that, it gives it more of a feeling of like, this is the town, this is what you're trying to preserve. So I like that about it. I think often we are used to seeing minis these days. We kind of get spoiled for minis. So, it would be cool to be able to see the actual enemies sort of, marching on the town. But I do think they did a really good job here of using different shapes and things. Now this system here I thought was really very impressive. I really like it. Now, not having the miniatures is okay when you have a very good system like this. I love the fact that each of the factions are different shapes, and the tougher the monster, you go up and get a bigger size monster. So very clean, very neat, very easy to see what's happening. So maybe not as delightful as seeing the miniatures and as immersive as seeing them on the table, but definitely I think much better in terms of actually playing the game and looking at the numbers and things like that. It is a little bit weird that they didn't put them on both sides, so you always got to make sure you put them on the side that you want. The other thing is, like, I like the fact that on the board they have all of the information. So if you see, but it is kind of like, it's a little weird that these monsters, again, I like this and I like the information here. However, there's just two monsters that have a special ability, which is a little untidy. It makes it hard to remember. You don't really look for this. And then I remember the first few times I played this, I was like, I kept having to go to the instruction booklet to kind of remember what the monsters were, because that kind of blends in here. And I just wanted to make sure, because only two of the factions have somebody with a special thing, so it's not that clean. I think it would have been better if maybe the big boss in each event had a special power, but it's just him, and the small of the trollkin, the goblins, have their own, they move a little faster. So it's just kind of weird that they just pick two random monsters. I do like that each of the factions is quite different. The Fire Horde can attack farther away with range, so they're very strong. The Undead are really powerful because they fight with Fate as well, so those symbols there will add some extra damage and stuff. And then the Trolls, when there's a bunch of them, they add a lot of damage. And I do like the fact that you can get the different bosses as well. They can really change things. It can be quite a swing in luck, and we're going to talk a bit about that kind of in a minute, because they come out, not only are they really difficult, but they often bring a bunch of other monsters with them. So, it's a double whammy. So, but I like that variety. I think there's enough different monsters in the game to really, they all kind of feel a little different. They make you think about things differently in terms of, tactically and stuff like that. Okay, sorry, I kind of got ahead of myself there for a minute. The other thing I think they did really well, graphic design wise, and just all this stuff kind of cuts down on the bandwidth. I think really clever, are these cards. Now, I mentioned, I always use, I often use Defenders of the Realm as kind of an example of something that drives me nuts. I remember playing that, and I haven't played it for probably 15 years now, but playing that game, you draw a card and you just be like, where is, the Silver Lodge? Where is it? And you're just looking all over the board, and you can, it takes you 15 minutes for every card. I hated it. This system here is so clean. Highlands. Okay, there's the Highlands. There's the Marsh of Sorrow. I mean, and even if you didn't know where this was, you can clearly see that this is probably in the this section of the board, just from the circular nature of it, right? And then also this red lines all around it. It's the Highlands, very easy to find. And then because of those symbols, that that's going to be this triangle, the the Fire Horde. And you can see very easily how to put them out. This is one of my favorite systems I think I've ever seen in any game, in terms of I think those two things together, the fact that the factions and stuff and the size of the tokens, really well done, cut down on the bandwidth, and then also having this spawn system, it's one of the cleanest ways I've ever seen to do it. In most games of this kind of nature, unless it's like the globe and you're like, okay, well, I know where New York is, I know where London is, I know where Johannesburg is, whatever, right? You can find them very easily, but this kind of a system in a fantasy world, like, it's probably the first time I didn't spend like 20 minutes looking for every card. What a clean, nice little system that was. I really, really found it to be like a pleasure to play with. Now the heroes, I like the fact that they all play very differently. I like the events are kind of like, there's multiples of a bunch of the events, so you might see something more than once, which is kind of nice because it gives them a little more of a cohesive feel. I really love the idea of these quests. It gives you something different to play with, and then I think it's kind of cool that you can decide at the end of the turn, okay, I'm never going to do that, or maybe the ability isn't useful, or maybe you just want to get to one of the more powerful abilities, and so at the end of the turn you can move it ahead. And then I like the fact that you can, complete these little quests. Maybe you decide when you're starting, hey, I'm gonna bulk up in some way. Maybe I'll go to a location and I'll do this thing so that I can get that benefit for later in the game. You're kind of doing a little preparedness. Then there's the different abilities that you can upgrade with, and it's kind of cool. There's a pretty big choice. Do you take one of these abilities, the next ability, or do you like that ability, or do you maybe upgrade one of the abilities you have? And depending on where you are in the game, that's such a really fascinating little decision, because sometimes you're like, well, this is clearly a better ability than this one, but at this point in the game, this is going to help me more. Like if you're towards the end game and you're like, well, I like this ability because it allows me to hit lots of enemies, but right now, like, the board doesn't have a lot of enemies, there's just bigger enemies, so maybe I should take something that does more damage. So there's a lot of decisions there, and I think each time that so there's 4 different characters, and they all play very, very differently. And in addition to that, like, each of the characters in and of themselves plays quite differently. Kind of reminds me a little bit of a much heavier game, which is cast in the old world. Like, you had a god, and you have all these different things you can do, but you can keep like custom tailoring your character, your faction or whatever. And I think this is like one of those kind of things where, like, you got a lot of different equipment, you got a lot of different abilities, you can upgrade those abilities, you can upgrade your characters, so you can draw different cards and things, and so there's kind of a lot you can do on your turn. I like the fact that on your down turns you can sort of, you can say, look, I'm not going to attack this round. I can't get in range to somebody or whatever. So instead, I'm going to mend a little bit, or I'm going to focus a little bit. Maybe I want to level my guy up. So every time I'm going to, take that practice action, or hey, I want to be able to use my abilities a lot, I'm going to take a focus action. And I like having those free actions where you can, use your events and things like that. So I think there's a lot to think about, and there's a lot of strategy you can do in terms of playing, should I go up, should I march up north? Should I wait for the enemies to come towards me? I think that charge action where the enemies can come closer to you quicker, that changes the way you react to a lot of things. You're like, well, they're going to reach me anyway. Do I want to go up to them and again try to hit them? But then they're going to, be closer, but if they can charge. So there's a lot to think about on a turn. There's a lot of, I think each game is going to play, essentially you're doing the same kind of thing, but there's a lot of tactics going on, and you can't really plan that well because you don't know what cards are going to come out, what kinds of monsters are going to come out, and things like that. So depending on the different kinds of monsters, well, it's going to require you to do different strategies, and you're going to want to maybe say, hey, look, do I risk going to the Marsh of Sorrow? It's way away, but I can get a good weapon and complete my quest by doing that, and then I can come back, but that's a very long time. Other things, like I think the dice system is kind of cool. Having that fate die is kind of cool because it allows the monsters to be different and to feel different, but also, like, you can take an upgrade that allows you to take the fate. Is it better to roll more dice? Is it better to attack more often? Or is it better to make each of your rolls better by having the fate? So I like all these little knobs and things that they have to change your character, and it's not always obvious what to do, or what's a better upgrade. And sometimes the upgrades work a little better with each other. Like if they allow you to roll more dice, one ability, and then maybe you take the fate thing so that you can get more dice, or maybe just roll more dice. I don't know. Everybody acts a little differently, and the characters play very differently. So I think that's kind of cool. And again, within themselves. Briefly, let's touch on this green die. I have no interest in playing. I've actually haven't even played with that green die. I don't get. So part of what I love in a cooperative game is being able to plan, and having the monsters move more often or move erratically really ruins the ability to kind of set up a turn. Okay, I'll move here, and then the next turn I'm going to be able to fire on these guys or do this. And I feel like it ruins that planning element, and that's kind of what I find to be one of the most enjoyable aspects of cooperative gaming. So, getting those extra moves and things, not such a big fan. So we talked a bunch about things that I like about the game. Let's talk about some things that I don't like. Okay, so this is, I am a gamer that generally enjoys as much agency as possible. I know you have to have some randomness in a game, so be it, but I like to have as much agency as possible. Now, this game does have quite a significant amount of randomness in a lot of ways. Okay, number one, you are going to have, your deck is going to have your event deck is going to be shuffled, so you don't know what you're going to get out of your event deck. Maybe it's something useful. Maybe it's like, hey, I really need something to add attack now. Maybe I'll just do a Hail Mary and draw a card. Okay, well, it's going to gain me some gold, which isn't useful at this point in the game. Or it's gain something if you're in a certain area, which you're nowhere near. Okay, so the event deck is randomized. Okay. When you attack, the monsters attack, they roll dice. When you attack, you roll dice. That's a randomizer. You can't get around that, of course, in any kind of game. There's no way to change your die roll. There's no real way to re-roll your dice. So I've played some games where I've done very well, and then really one die roll has ruined the game for me, which is really disappointing. And I'll talk about why that is in just a moment. The other thing is your event deck, or your equipment deck. I love the fact that you can move to the next one if you want to, but this equipment, I wish that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of the equipment cards. I keep saying event. And if you get one that's really good, or it's one that you can accomplish very quickly, great. Those opening few turns, they're very, very useful. And if you can get more powerful equipment or easier to get equipment, that's a bunch of randomness, right? So you've got 10 different cards. You can see the most powerful one might be on the bottom, or the ones that are very easy to accomplish might be on the top. That can lead to a very big swing of luck as well. Now, you can move through them quickly, over each turn, but there aren't a ton of turns in the game. And, sometimes once you get sort of, I'd say mid to late game, you're mostly just fighting and you don't have enough time to do some of these other things. So that's something that I feel is a large swing of luck. Again, the same thing with the ability cards. The order they come out in sometimes is a very big deal. You can get an ability that's better or better for that situation on the top. You're going to be doing quite well. Now, I think this all kind of ties up in the randomness, because also, let me mention this, the monsters, again, what kind of monsters come out, the order that those monsters come out, that's another point of randomness. So you can see there's quite a significant amount of things that are going to happen that is kind of out of your control. Now, I often use Pandemic as my sort of benchmark in terms of cooperative gaming, because it's one of my favorite all-time games. The player deck is random and the enemy deck is random. Everything else is deterministic. This game, so that's 2 points of randomness. So this game has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points of randomness. That's a pretty significant amount of randomness. So now, the reason I think that this kind of is, and now I do really enjoy this game, but I think that this is heightened by a little one design decision in this game. Now, I really love the bandwidth that's saved by having these red tokens here. So you can't take an action more than once. Now, I remember talking about a game, and I can't remember the game now off the top of my head, but I remember thinking this game is completely made or driven by the fact that you can only take one action once per turn. And this game, I think, is much the same. And this is where I think the randomness kind of comes in a little more. So, because you can only move once and you can only attack once, I think you're going to get in a short game, you're going to get about 20 monsters, okay? There are 12 turns in the short game. Okay, you're going to get 20 monsters. That means you can only attack once per round. You can only have 4 of those monsters escape you and get into the town. That will lose you the game. So you have to be able to kill basically 1 monster a turn, right? However, you can only attack once per round. Now, you have different abilities and things that you can play for cards and things like that. Maybe you have abilities that will allow you to get an extra attack action or something. But remember also that a lot of the monsters are very, very strong. You can only attack them, you're not going to kill them one time per hit, right? So you might have to attack monsters multiple times. So not being able to attack multiple times means you can't be okay, I'm going to move up and I'm going to get a good position and I'm going to attack and attack, right? You can't do that. So if you get a bad roll, it's a really big deal, because sometimes you really have very few opportunities to attack. Again, if you upgrade your character, sometimes you can make multiple attacks or add damage to those attacks, but mostly you're locked in. The other thing is and this is the thing about being close by and stuff, if the monster cards, this is where this kind of there's several ways that this locks in, right? So drawing monster cards, well, if you keep drawing trolls and you're down there fighting the trolls, well, you can only move once per turn, and that's only a movement of 3. Well, the one character move farther, but like, you know, if you have to go all the way to the side of the map, that's a really huge deal. That's a big swing in luck. But if you happen to draw multiple trolls, you know, when you're up in the troll area fighting, you're going to have way easier time rather than having drawn the trolls and then drawn, you know, the dead on the other side of the map or something like that. So that's a huge thing as well. Now, if you could move twice or you can take those actions multiple times, that wouldn't be as severe. But, you know, if you happen to have, you can combine these things and say, okay, well, if you have the trolls near you and you happen to have the equipment that's near the trolls or something, you know, on the top of the deck, then you can kind of like, those will line up quite well. But if they're against you, I feel like that kind of makes a snowball effect of both getting lucky, but also the snowball effect of getting unlucky. And I think those kind of amplify each other. Okay, so all in all, the graphic design and the bandwidth of the game, like in terms of how they, you know, had the tokens and how they come out and stuff like that, really, really fantastic. Very well done. Makes the game very, very easy to play. And it is a pretty straightforward and easy game. The instruction booklet was really well done. Really, like, again, very, very easy, but there's a ton of tactical choices. You know, do you go to kind of do your quest? Do you move that quest to the bottom? Which ability do you take? Do you take a new ability when you upgrade? Do you flip your ability when you upgrade instead to make that ability better? Do you draw cards? Do you work on focus or anything like that? Which character do you take? You know, how do you want to play it? Do you bulk up, let the enemies come to you? Do you run up there and try to kill them really fast? Do you lock the enemies down so they're just attacking you rather than marching on the town to try to save the town? Oh, that's great, but maybe maybe you'll get yourself killed doing that, and that removes buildings out of town. So a lot of really interesting choices. However, I do think that's tempered by the fact that because you can only take one action per round, if the monsters are very spread out, if your die roll doesn't go very well because you can only attack once around, you know, if you get some equipment that you're not really excited about, or if you get something that's very easy to get because of where you are in the game, or if the abilities that you get are really synergistic with the equipment that you happen to get, you know, that can lead to snowballing in a much more random experience, or snowballing in a much more random good experience, like beneficial for you, which is not necessarily the best way either, or the, you know, snowballing towards the bad. And again, like, you know, you could just completely whiff on a really good dice roll, and you could really, really be in trouble. So I think they compound on each other like that. But overall, I think this is really a very enjoyable game. I love this genre of tower defense. Some of my favorite games kind of fall into this. And this is an interesting game that I find to be quite enjoyable. There's lots of also levers and things. You've got the short game if you don't have a lot of time. You got the longer game if you want a little more, you know, more difficult and lengthier experience. And again, a few different characters in the box, and you can kind of fine-tune those to make them feel and play a little bit differently as well. So a lot of variety here. All in all, I think it's a really good option to buy, and it's got a lot of legs. I think you can play this quite a bit and find a lot of different strategies and things, and different you know, abilities and different things to go for. So I think that games are going to be able to play quite differently, but you do have to temper that with the fact that you may get a little luckier than you want, or maybe a little luckier than you should be getting. So meaning the games will be a little easier or harder. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of the game and whether or not this is something that you would enjoy playing or not. But for now, I gotta roll.